You planted it on a Saturday. You remember that. You dug the hole with your own two hands, set that little tree in the ground, and stood back with the hose running, thinking about pies. $40 for the tree, maybe 50. Then you waited 1 year, two, four. You watched it through the kitchen window every morning while the coffee brewed. And then one June, right when the branches finally hung heavy with fruit, you heard it, that crack. Half the tree laid open on the grass, fruit still green, the split wood pale as a wound. 7 years of waiting, gone in one afternoon. And here's the part that stings. The tree didn't fail you. Something killed it slow over all those years. And odds are you did it yourself without ever knowing. Now hold on. Before you feel bad about that, hear me out. You didn't do anything that 90% of folks don't do. The garden center didn't tell you. The tag on the tree sure didn't tell you. Nobody taught you, and there's a reason nobody taught you. We'll get to that before we're done today. My name is Walter Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and I farm the same Ozark ground in Missouri that my grandfather worked back in the 1940s. We ran a little orchard alongside the produce stand for most of my life. I've planted fruit trees, killed fruit trees, and buried my mistakes. Today, I'm going to save you from mine. Here's what we're doing. I've got 9 quiet killers for you, 9 mistakes that take a fruit tree down slow over years while everything looks fine from the porch. Every one of them costs you real money or real time, and every single fix is free. And listen close, because mistake number 7 is the one that'll get you. It looks exactly like good pruning. Half the internet will teach you to do it on purpose. Don't you go anywhere before we get to that one. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1. You left the tag on the tree. I know, it sounds like nothing. That little plastic label looped around a branch, the one that says Alberta Peach or Honey Crisp, with the pretty picture. You left it on so you'd remember what you planted. But that branch is getting fatter every single season, and that plastic loop is not. Year 1, it's loose. Year 3, it's snug. Year 5, it has cut clean through the bark all the way around, and that's called girdling. Here's why it kills. The thin green layer right under the bark is the tree's plumbing. Everything the leaves make has to travel down through that layer to feed the roots. Choke that line, and the roots starve while the top still looks green. Then one spring, the whole branch just doesn't wake up. The warning sign is bark that's starting to swell and fold over the plastic like a muffin over a pan. The fix costs nothing. Walk out there this evening and take off every tag, every wire, every twist of string on every tree you own. If you want to keep track of your varieties, write the name on a cedar stake and push it in the dirt by the trunk. The old orchard men kept a notebook in a coffee can in the barn. Worked for 50 years. Mistake number 2. You staked the tree tight and left it that way. Folks plant a young tree, drive in a steel post, and cinch it up snug so the wind can't move it. Feels responsible. It's the opposite. A tree builds its strength by swaying. Every time the wind pushes it, the trunk thickens where it bent, and the roots grip deeper on the side that got pulled. Tie it rigid, and the tree never builds any of that. It grows tall and soft, like a man who's never lifted anything heavier than a pencil. Then you finally pull the stake in year 3. The first real storm comes through, and over she goes, roots and all. The warning sign is a trunk that's skinny at the bottom and barely tapers, or a tie that's biting into the bark. Here's the right way, and it's an old-timer trick. If your spot is windy enough to truly need a stake, use a strip of old bicycle inner tube or a soft rag, not wire, never wire. Leave a good 6 inches of slack so the tree can lean and swing and catch itself, and take the whole rig out after 1 year, 2 at the most. The stake is training wheels. Nobody leaves training wheels on a bicycle for 5 years. Now, while we're standing here between trees, let me ask you something plain. How much have fruit trees cost you so far? Add up the trees that died, the sprays that didn't work, the years you waited for nothing. For most folks, that number runs past a few $100s. Everything on this channel is about not spending that money twice. Subscribing costs you nothing, and it's the smartest thing you'll do in the garden today. Now, back to work. Mistake number 3. You planted it too deep. This one breaks my heart because it's invisible, and it dooms the tree from day one. A fruit tree has a spot near the base called the root collar, where the trunk widens out and the first fat roots leave the stem. That flare is meant to live above the soil, in the open air. Bury it, and the bark down there stays damp year-round. Bark is like the skin on your hands. It can take rain, but it can't take being wrapped in a wet towel for 10 years. It softens, rot moves in, and the tree spends its whole life sickly, no matter how you feed it or prune it. The warning sign is simple. Walk to your tree and look at the bottom. If the trunk goes into the ground straight as a fence post, with no flare showing, it's too deep. A healthy tree should look like it's standing on slightly bent knees. The fix at planting time is free. Dig your hole wide, not deep, and set the tree so that flare sits an inch or 2 above the finished grade. It'll feel too shallow. It isn't. And if a tree you already own is buried, you can pull the soil and mulch back away from the trunk with your hands until you find that flare and give it air. That alone has saved more than one tree on this place. Mistake number 4. You let the baby make fruit. I know exactly how this one happens because I fought Margaret over it once. Second spring, the little tree puts out 4 or 5 blossoms, and they turn into 4 or 5 little peaches, and you guard them like grandchildren. Friend, pick them off, everyone the first 2 years. Here's the why. A young tree has one bank account of energy, and every piece of fruit is a withdrawal. Fruit is expensive to make. Sugar, water, all of it, pulled away from the job that actually matters in those first years, which is roots and wood. Let a baby tree fruit, and you get a handful of small peaches now and a weak tree forever. Pinch the fruit off, and the tree pours all that effort into structure, and in year 4 or 5, it pays you back 10 times over, on branches thick enough to carry the load. The warning sign that a tree fruited too young is a little tree with skinny branches already bowing toward the ground. The instruction is exact. Years 1 and 2 in the ground, remove all fruit as soon as it sets, no bigger than a thumbnail. Year 3, you can leave a couple just to taste what's coming. I won't pretend that part doesn't hurt. It does. But you're trading a snack today for bushels later. Mistake number 5. You let 2 leaders fight for the crown. Stand back and look at your young tree. If you see 2 main stems rising side by side, about the same thickness, making a tight letter V, you're looking at the crack before it happens. That's called a codominant stem, and here's the mechanics of it, plain as I can make it. When 2 stems grow that close at that angle, the bark gets pinched down inside the joint between them, bark against bark. There's no woven wood in there holding them together, just two poles leaning on each other. Load that joint with 100 peaches and one July thunderstorm, and it splits straight down into the trunk like a log on the block. The warning sign is the tight V, and bark folding into the crotch instead of pushing up out of it in a little ridge. The fix is one cut, made while the tree is young. Pick the straighter, stronger stem and keep it. Cut the rival back hard, or take it off entirely so the tree settles the argument now while the wound is the size of a quarter and heals in a season. A good keeper branch leaves the trunk wide at an angle like 10 o'clock on the dial and stays no thicker than a third of the trunk it's riding on. One trunk, one boss. The old people knew this because they had to. We're past the halfway mark, and the worst is still ahead of you. Number 7 is coming. The mistake that wears a disguise. The one folks do on purpose because somebody on the internet told them it was proper. If you've ever cleaned up the inside of a fruit tree, you especially need to stay for it. Mistake number 6. You pruned at the wrong time. Most folks prune whenever the saw happens to be sharp, and a lot of advice says fall after harvest when the work is done. Here's the trouble with that. Every cut you make is an open wound, and a tree can only close a wound while it's actively growing. Cut in late fall, and that wound sits open all winter, wet and cold, for months. And the rot fungi, the ones that eat wood from the inside, a good number of them work just fine in cool, damp weather. You've given them all season to move in, with the doors unlocked and nobody home. The warning sign of bad timing cuts from years past is a pruning scar that never closed, just a dead-eyed hollow forming in the branch. The right windows are 2. Late winter, just before the buds swell for your big shaping cuts, because spring growth comes fast behind it and starts sealing right away. And midsummer for light trims, when the tree heals in a matter of weeks. While I've got the pruners in hand, 2 small things that matter more than folks think. Wipe your blades with rubbing alcohol between trees every time. A dirty blade carries disease from a sick tree to a healthy one, same as a dirty needle would. And keep the flat side of the pruner facing the wood you're removing, sharp blade toward the tree, so you bruise the scrap and not the keeper. Now, before we get to number 7, do something for me. Put your state, or your USDA zone, if you know it, down in the comments. Pruning windows shift 2-3 weeks between Zone 4 and Zone 9, and I read every one. What you tell me down there decides what we cover next on this channel. All right, here it comes. Mistake number 7. The one I promised you. It's called lion tailing. And I'd bet money somebody you know does it proudly. It goes like this. You read that fruit trees need air and light, which is true. So you go down each big branch and strip off all the small interior growth, every little twig and shoot along its length, until the branch is a long, bare pole with a tuft of leaves way out at the tip, like a lion's tail. It looks clean. It looks professional. People pay so-called professionals to do it, and it is the single best way to make a branch snap. Here's the mechanism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Think of a teeter-totter. Weight close to the middle, easy to hold. Same weight way out at the end, and it takes everything you've got. Strip the interior, and you've moved every leaf and every peach out to the end of the lever, where it pries on the joint with all its might. Worse, in wind, a branch with growth spread along it sways in a dozen small staggered motions that cancel each other out. A lion-tailed branch takes the whole gust at once, in one violent whip, all of it landing on that crotch at the trunk. The warning sign is bare poles with pom-poms. The fix is patience. Keep the small interior wood thin where branches cross or crowd. Take whole shoots back to where they start, but leave growth spread down the length of every limb. That little twig you almost cut is next year's peach, hanging where your hand can reach it. Now you know what half the internet doesn't. Mistake number 8. When you do cut, you cut wrong or you cut too much. Two halves to this one, both expensive. First, the too much. A tree's leaves are its kitchen. Take more than a third of the canopy in 1 year, and you've shut down a third of the kitchen. The tree panics and throws up water sprouts, those skinny vertical whips, trying to get its leaves back, and now you've traded one problem for 40. So the rule is 1/3, never more, in any single year. Cherries are touchier still. Keep it closer to 1/5 on a cherry. If a tree needs major surgery, spread it over 2 or 3 winters. Slow is fast with trees. Second, the cutting wrong. Ever taken a saw to a heavy limb and had it tear loose halfway through, peeling a strip of bark 2 feet down the trunk? That peel is an open sore the tree may never close. Heavy limbs come off in 3 cuts. First cut underneath, a few inches out from where you want to finish, about 1/3 of the way up through the wood. Second cut from the top, just outside the first, and the limb drops clean. The undercut stops the tear. Third cut takes off the stub, just outside the little raised collar where branch meets trunk. Never flush, never into the collar. 3 cuts, 2 extra minutes, and the tree closes the wound instead of wearing it. And one honest word here, because that's the only way I know how to talk. If you're sawing limbs, wear gloves and glasses. The fellows who do this for a living will tell you the chainsaw never got them. It's the hand saw and the branch tip to the eye every time. And if a cut means climbing a ladder, the answer is to make the tree shorter, not to climb. A man my age has no business picking apples off a ladder, and I'll say more on that in a minute. Mistake number 9, and this one ends on a sweet note. You let the tree keep every fruit it sets. A loaded branch in June looks like a blessing. 200 little peaches packed shoulder to shoulder. But the tree only has so much sugar to hand out, and split 200 ways, every peach comes up small, hard, and ordinary, and the sheer weight bows the branches to breaking. My grandfather thinned by hand every spring, and his rule was simple. When the fruit is marble-sized, take off enough that what's left sits a hand's width apart, about 6 inches between peaches, 4 for plums. It feels wasteful. Half your crop on the ground in an afternoon, but the tree pours everything into what remains. And come August, you're picking fruit the size of your fist, heavy and sweet enough to drip down your wrist, the kind you remember from being a kid. Fewer and finer. That was the whole philosophy of the old orchards, and it never failed them. While you're at it, prune with the picking in mind. Keep your trees low, 8 feet, 10 at most. So every piece of fruit is a reach or a short step, not a ladder. A short tree with big fruit beats a tall tree with a fractured hip, and I mean that as plainly as it sounds. One more thing before the recap, because folks with animals need to hear it. The leaves of peach, plum, cherry, all the stone fruits, carry compounds that turn to cyanide in the gut. Wilted leaves are the worst. So when you prune, those trimmings do not go over the fence to the goats, the horses, or the dog that chews everything. Pile them, haul them, Burn them, not feed. Now let's run it back. But by your tree, not by my list. If you're standing in front of a tree you're about to plant, your money mistakes are the hole and the hardware. Shallow hole, root collar in the air, tag off the day it goes in, stake loose or no stake at all. If yours is 1 to 3 years old, you're in the structure years. Settle the codominant fight now, keep the baby fruit picked off, and resist the urge to prune much at all while it finds its feet. If your tree is grown and bearing, your enemies are weight and timing. Thin the fruit to a hand's width, keep growth spread down the limbs instead of bunched at the tips, big cuts in late winter, a third or less, 3 cuts on anything heavy, and if you've got an old neglected tree you're ashamed of, don't take the chainsaw to it in one angry Saturday. 3 winters, a third of the problem each winter, and that old tree will surprise you. There's life in them long past where most folks give up. Now, the question I promised to answer. Why did nobody tell you any of this? Nobody hid it. Nobody had to. Just follow the money for a second. A tree that splits in year 5 gets replaced with a new $40 tree. A tree planted right and pruned right in year 1 never needs replacing, never needs the rescue sprays, never brings you back through the register. The folks selling trees aren't villains. They're just not paid to teach you the things that end the buying. My grandfather learned this from his father because a dead tree meant a hungry winter. We learned it from nobody because for us a dead tree just meant another trip to the store. That's the whole story. Here's your job this week, and it costs nothing. Before Sunday supper, walk out to your fruit trees with your coffee and inspect 3 things. The tag, if it's still on there, take it off on the spot. The base, look for that root flare, and the crotches, look for the tight V. 10 minutes. You might just find the thing that was going to take your tree down in 3 years while it's still a 5-minute fix. And before you go, I want to hear something from you. Did your dad or your grandmother, that old fellow down the road, have their own rule for fruit trees? When to prune? How to thin? Some trick with the planting hole? Put it in the comments. Those little family rules are exactly the kind of knowledge that dies quiet when nobody writes it down, and I read every single one. Next time, we're starting at the very beginning. How to plant a fruit tree the old way, from the shape of the hole to the first year's care, so it lives longer than you and me both. After today, you'll know what to do once it's in the ground. Next time, we get it into the ground right. That's the old garden way. I'll see you in the garden.